You're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network of podcasts.
Today on episode 94 of the Cinema Geeks,
we give you more reasons to be excited about the upcoming Black Panther film.
We tell you which films are facing production issues.
And in our main attraction, we give you our take on Captain America: Civil War.
All that and more coming up on episode 94 with the Cinema Geeks.
That's right, it's episode 94 of the Cinema Geeks, and for those of you that are astute listeners, you may be questioning our counting ability, and that's just because I like to put the wrong numbers in scripts at times. So technically it is episode 94. You can just go through the archives and figure out what happened to episode 93, but there was actually two episodes we introduced as episode 92. So now we're straightened out. We're at episode 94, and I'll try to count better in the future. I'm not a math person, but I am one of your Cinema Geeks, Optimus Solo. Joining me, as you heard in the intro, is Hard Candy Mandy.
Hello.
Movie Revolt Dan.
How's it going?
Not too bad. And the flea market extraordinaire, Mr. Fridley Scent. Hello.
I got a helmet.
You got a helmet. Well, you can't just say a helmet, though. That doesn't geekify it enough.
Well, I got a Clone Trooper helmet, but don't worry, my Boba Fett helmet's in the mail. That's
excellent.
Actually a legit fact. I'm expecting it Wednesday.
So you've had a busy week or weekend of going to various flea markets. Dan, how's your week been?
Busy as well. Just son just can't stay healthy. I guess it's a thing now. So a lot of doctor's visits. So that's been exciting. But other than that, yeah, it's nice to see the weather. It's getting warmer. That's exciting. Orioles are doing well, so I'm excited about that too. But.
Excellent. My Spurs were eliminated from the NBA playoffs recently, but the Cubs are doing fantastic, so I can live on through baseball season, I guess. Our weekend has been a little bit different. We've actually been on a little staycation this week, so we've been getting some work around the house. We've been staining our deck, which we're about 2/3 of the way through, and watching movies and doing all kinds of stuff. We actually went to the video store, and I think we came back with 9 movies on the first day of the staycation, Amanda?
Yeah, I don't know. There was just a couple handfuls.
And we've gotten through all of them except for, I believe, 2. So, and we've also made a theater visit as well, which we'll get to a little bit later. So it's been a fun week, as well as our anniversary, 2 years together. So it's been somewhat of a celebratory week.
Well, happy anniversary!
Yeah, we're celebrating that by staining the deck today and podcasting. So,
Thanks for joining us.
Is that the new 2-year anniversary? Because every anniversary is something new.
It's the wood or something, right?
It's not
the wood anniversary.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
The staining of the wood.
2 years now is podcasting, so.
It's the techie anniversary breakdown. So we're going to get into some news as we usually do at the beginning of the episode, and doing a little different here because none of you guys have actually seen the news stories. So I'm going to be springing this stuff on you and seeing what your reaction is. Some of them you may have seen on the internet or not, but we'll start with what you teased in the opening, Dan, and that is some news on the Black Panther front, which kind of coincides, obviously, with our discussion later on of Captain America: Civil War, so I guess we'll show our hand a little bit on how we felt with the Black Panther character in that film by talking about this, but 2 casting rumors this week about the individual standalone Black Panther film, and that is, number 1, that Michael B. Jordan would be joining the cast, and that the other one is that the possibility, not confirmed, but the possibility that Lupita Nyong'o would also be joining the Black Panther film casting. Amanda, excited more, less, or just the same for the Black Panther film?
I'm excited still. I don't want to say anything because I think even if I'm not trying to be racist, it's probably going to sound racist with those additions there. I just feel like they're a couple of the most known actors and actresses right now that are popular in like the African American community. So putting them in a movie that's surrounding like the only African American Marvel character that's getting their own standalone film. I don't know how I feel about that. Like, what are they doing there? But I get it, and I'm still excited nonetheless.
Dan, what do you think?
It makes sense because Ryan Coogler is directing, and of course he's worked with Michael B. Jordan with both Fruitvale Station and Creed. Now it's interesting that both people who've played Human Torch are now in the Marvel Universe. So I guess that's a thing. But yeah, he's a great actor, so that has me excited. I'm curious what role he's playing. I don't know if he's going to be, a major character, if he's going to be playing some sort of villain, because I'm not really sure where they're going. But I think what I'm really excited about is that I think it means that the movie is mostly going to take place in Wakanda, which has me excited because it's going to at least be a new setting for a Marvel film, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm going to echo that thought. That's what makes me the most intrigued, is that I would kind of lends to what you're saying, like that it would be taking place in Wakanda, a new setting, a new group of individuals to get to know, and something much different and far removed from what we've gotten so far with the Marvel Universe, which seems that it's either in, big New York type settings or big cities, metropolitan areas, or it's in space. So it'd be interesting to see how they handle this. And Ryan Coogler obviously has history with Michael B. Jordan. He's gotten some great performances out of him. So I guess depending on what kind of part, it does bode well for that. Matt, excited for the Black Panther standalone film?
Yeah, I don't know. I got some mixed feelings. I think everyone's on the Black Panther bandwagon, and I'm still all like, but I like Falcon. Because Falcon was great. I feel like the hype around Black Panther is the same hype that was around Falcon after Cap 2. And then he had, a cameo in Avengers, he got his ass kicked in Ant-Man, and now it's like, nope, we're moving on. And it's like, he's so much better. I don't know about better, but cool. He's so cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm a little upset and a little salty that Falcon doesn't get his own movie. But to have a Wakandan-based Black Panther movie might mean that we could have a Marvel movie where we don't have to have every single Avenger in it. And, I mean, that would be cool to, be like, yeah, there's still small-time things happening. It's not always a massive thing.
Yeah, and I think that would be well received by most people. Maybe not by the masses. I guess maybe everybody wants to see the team up film every time, but at least for those of us maybe a little bit more mature about the things, it would be nice to see kind of a little bit more low key and some side stories going on there. Let's get the bad news out of the way. I have it in the script. All it says is Ocean's 11, so you might not know why that's bad or why that's not, and maybe I'm the only one that'll feel that that's bad. But the rumors is that there is going to be a reboot of Ocean's 11. I don't know if we've had this rumor before, but the all-female version, and there's 2 names attached to it this time, which would be Amanda, Sandy B, and Jennifer Lawrence are the 2 names that are being thrown about. So Ocean's 11...
Sandy B like George Clooney?
What's that?
So Sandy B is George Clooney, and then Jennifer Lawrence is going to be Brad Pitt?
I don't know.
Or Matt Damon?
And who's going to be the other 9 or 10 females?
I don't know.
Melissa McCarthy.
We can only hope.
Amanda, any excitement for Ocean's 11, the female version?
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. I think that, I don't know what we want to call it, but this fad of this all-female cast reboots, I think I kind of dig it. It's a cool way to reboot.
Cool way to reboot, but is it going to quickly be overdone, Dan?
Well, everything gets overdone, so probably Hollywood never leaves early. It's not like they're like, okay, we're gonna, they run it to the ground as much as possible. But
they're that guy at the party that, the last person has left, and the host is, doing dishes in the kitchen, and they're still, chatting on the couch, and you're just like, come on.
Oblivious to everything else, yeah, pretty much.
I'm getting in my pajamas now. It's time for you to go. Continue.
So, I'm not 100% against the idea of doing it. My question is who's behind it, who's going to be the director. Sandra Bullock and Jennifer Lawrence, that's a pretty solid cast just to start off with, and I do enjoy myself a good heist movie, but I just wonder if they really even does it need to have the link to Ocean's 11? I guess you need the name recognition, but I feel like maybe with that type of cast, maybe you wouldn't, but I don't know. I would be more. I'm actually probably more intrigued with it being an all-female cast rather it being a new version with freaking Zac Efron and that crew of kids. I don't know who's
the Ryan Gosling and Mark Wahlberg and
yeah. So I mean, it's probably it is overdone a little bit, and maybe people are some people can claim it's a gimmick and it's pandering or whatever you want to do it, but if they get the right people behind it, it could be good.
The rumors in the article are that I believe his name is Gary Ross, the guy that did the Hunger Games. I might be getting the wrong first name, but would be the director, who obviously has experience directing Jennifer Lawrence. And the writer was the one that wrote Little Women, the film. So I don't know if that means good things.
Not the book.
No, not the book. I didn't want anyone to be confused out there. No, so I don't know. It depends on if people like those two the series of films, The Hunger Games or the Little Women film. I guess if they'd be excited that those are the two names. And it's also being rumored that George Clooney would have he would be producing it, and then he would have a small cameo somewhere in the film. So I guess that would be your link to the Ocean's 11 casting storyline, etc. Matt, are you a fan of the Ocean's movies at all?
I am a big fan. Well, I call myself a big fan. I don't know that I've seen 12 or 13. I like Ocean's 11, but I really like the original Rat Pack one. It's one of my favorite heist films, and I like heist films, so I don't know. That's the thing. I'm all for heavily female-centric movies that are not just, cheesy love stories or anything like that. Like, because, that's a thing that we don't get nearly enough of. But I also agree with why even have Ocean's 11? Is the name recognition really going to draw that many people in?
Hollywood's scared to put anything out there that's not connected to something. You know that. So.
Yeah. Again, we can all talk about how much we hate Hollywood here on our movie podcast, where we all go and support it every week.
It's all about who you know.
Well, let's get into some of the behind the scenes, I guess, in Hollywood then. Some films that are having a little bit of production issues. So if you're a fan or if you're looking forward to these films, might not be the best of news, but we'll see here. First off is Godzilla 2, the sequel to Godzilla 2 that's supposed to be a step closer to connecting Godzilla and King Kong in some type of all-out battle a couple years from now. And the news around that is that Gareth Edwards has actually stepped out of the director's chair for Godzilla 2. So I know not a lot of us were huge on his directing in Godzilla 1, so maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it usually doesn't mean great things for a film when a director steps out. Or is this just the fact that he is now in the Star Wars universe and has no time for anything else, Dan?
That's a good question. I guess if you were asking me, would I rather do Star Wars or Godzilla 2, personally I'd probably go with Star Wars, so I don't blame him. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting because it's seeing him. Didn't he also? I thought there was rumors that he may not be doing the next Star Wars movie either. So who knows?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't see those.
But that may be incorrect. So who knows? But I don't know. I enjoyed the last Godzilla enough, but there were a lot of problems with it. So I'm all okay with someone new coming in, maybe trying something different. So.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have no problem with that. It makes no impact on me. Unless somebody really great comes in, I guess I would be somewhat more excited than before, but otherwise I'm just kind of meh on the whole thing anyways. Matt, are you a fan of the stuff they're doing here with Godzilla, King Kong, and eventually uniting them? And does this throw any wrenches in the road for you?
What company's doing this?
Universal, I believe, isn't it?
Well, at least it's not Warner Brothers. They've proven that they don't know what they're doing with movies.
Just in general.
Well, they definitely can't make a universe that seems cohesive and logical, so I don't know, I don't need this in my life. I don't need the crossover, I don't need all of the big monsters to get together and fight or even team up. And it's not even one that I even as a kid was like, oh, I wonder what would happen if King Kong and Godzilla, just because, one's Eastern, one's Western, and so it never, I guess, crossed my mind as a child. I do like the idea of anyone who touched the first one leaving, because that was a mess.
I'm with you on that.
But, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say they shouldn't do it. I don't have high hopes.
Yeah, I don't have high hopes either. I guess we'll have to wait and see who gets involved with that. Amanda, the other film that is having few issues is apparently Aquaman, which obviously we got the sneak peek into what the Aquaman character would look like in Batman vs. Superman, and there was rumors that James Wan had stepped out of the director's chair. Now there's rumors that he never did that. He's back on and is still doing it, but the rumor that circulated in the last week or so is that now apparently it is being rewritten altogether from page one, entirely rewritten from scratch. That usually doesn't bode well, but the film is not slated to be released, I don't think, until 2018. So is this no big deal? There's plenty of time still to get a good screenplay written up for Aquaman, or do you think it's disturbing that now they're rewriting the whole thing?
Super disturbing. I feel like that's kind of late in the game. I mean, yeah, 2018, but there's a lot of stuff that needs to go on between then. And I don't know, is it going to follow in line with the feel that they already set in place with a tone from that snippet that we got in Batman vs. Superman, because I want it to. I don't want the look to change. I'm a little worried.
I'm sure the look won't change. I don't know what this is going to mean as far as what the problems were with the original script, or likewise, is this just another sign of what's going on in the DC cinematic universe, Dan, or are we just overreacting way too early?
It's hard to tell, because, thinking of something like Ant-Man, that was rewritten and had problems, and I think overall, maybe it did turn out as well as it could if, like, Edgar Wright was behind it, but at least turned out solid enough. I'm worried really with anything when it comes to DC at this point, to be honest with you. Hearing rewrites, hearing they're starting over from scratch, like, it just, like, what is causing that? How did you get to that point where you had the script that was done, you're ready to go, and suddenly now you're reacting and changing it? And that's my issue with Warner Brothers to begin with. They're very reactionary. They are, we talked about chasing trends. It seems like they're doing that all the time, just trying to figure out what's the next best thing, and they really have a very little grasp over what they want to do. They have no vision, really. They just really are just trying to throw things out there. So the fact that they're changing things up as much as they are, and we've heard of things with Suicide Squad and doing reshoots as well, it just seems like they are lacking that foresight, or are lacking a presence to really keep things on the wraps, and like having an idea of, okay, this is the direction we're going, we're going to keep with it. But they're just, I think, just throwing at things at a dartboard and hoping something sticks, it sounds like.
Yeah, there definitely doesn't seem like there's a steady hand at the helm of this whole ship. Matt, any surprise that we're now, after doing reshoots on some Suicide Squad, that we're now rewriting most of, if not all of, Aquaman?
I don't know, I want to say it's not surprising, but that seems a little, vindictive and mean. But I think to piggyback on what Mandy was saying, if you think about that, like, the Civil War, that wasn't a movie they were writing a year ago or 2 years ago. Like, to have the foresight of having a cohesive world in which you have just forces from all over the place, and it feels like if there's only one guy, or if there's all 30 guys, it feels like the same world and it all makes sense. You've got to have a vision and a plan years, if not decades, into the future. And if you are 2 years out and you're like, oh, we need to redo 100% of this movie, you don't have that plan, and you shouldn't be in that game.
Right. I agree with with all three of you guys, actually, though, with Amanda and Matt. This had to be a longer plan than to do this, even if it's only 2 years out. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes and visual stuff that has to be going on. And with Dan saying, too, that it just doesn't seem like it seems like they're reactionary. They're, like you said, throwing darts at dartboards and hoping to see what sticks. And every time that there's a movie released, there's a new reaction and there's changes and whatnot, and it's kind of disturbing. Amanda?
There's got to be some correlation to the backlash that happened from Batman versus Superman. I think they got super cold feet, and they're like, fuck, what are we going to do? And they scrapped everything to try to revamp it to make sure that the Batman versus Superman backlash doesn't follow through and carry over to the Aquaman.
Right. And it'd also be interesting to see the tone as far as these films go moving forward, because there's been a lot of talk out of Warner Brothers and DC that, they were happy with being the grittier, being the more, what they were calling grittier and more darker and, a little less humorous, etc., compared to Marvel. Be interesting to see as we get Suicide Squad and these films going forward if they're reversing the course on that and starting to try to go back to a little bit more fun and friendly and humorous mode. I mean, I hope they don't necessarily do that, because like Dan said, that's just reactionary, and that's not why Batman vs. Superman got a bad reaction.
They need to just hold their ground and follow through with the vision that they set up to begin with.
And just remove Zack Snyder and continue as they had planned. So
Don't be a bitch.
What's that?
Don't be a bitch.
And then the other news story, which probably means nothing to you guys because all it says is The Irishman, and I'm sure that doesn't mean a lot to most people listening to this, but let's play a little word association. Dan, I'm going to start with you on this one because I know that you tend to, I think you've liked a lot of these films in the past. I don't know what Amanda and Matt's take on the mob drama is, but here's the rundown for The Irishman. It's going to be a mob drama. Martin Scorsese is going to be directing. He's just acquired the rights to this film called The Irishman. It's going to be depicting events concerning the murderers' row, I guess, of mobsters during the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It says murderers' row of 70s, 80s, and 90s heavyweights. And the cast reads like this: Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci, Harvey Keitel, and Al Pacino. Dan, can they somehow spark what they had decades ago and reunite that, or is this going to be interesting to see what they do all these years later with this cast and this director?
That's interesting because you realize it's been forever. Joe Pesci, you think his last movie was like Gone Fishing or something like that. Like he's not really acted a lot, and he's kind of walked away. Robert De Niro hasn't worked with Scorsese since Casino in the 90s, which is insane. So,
and I should caveat that with the casting has not been confirmed yet. The only part that has been confirmed is the story that's the rights have been purchased to that Scorsese is going to be directing and kind of what it's about. And those are the 4 people that he has mentioned that he wants. So they haven't agreed to it yet.
If anyone could get Pacino back to being good Pacino and De Niro back to being a good actor again, it would be Scorsese, though De Niro did do really well in Silver Linings Playbook a couple years ago. So clearly he still has the capability. Just I think when you're in the business for so long, you could probably it can get to you. So I'm excited just to see what that would like, seeing them get back together for the first time in over 20 years or so. So yeah, I'm for it.
And I wouldn't think it would be hard to get De Niro on board. He doesn't seem to say no too much these days in Hollywood. I think the catch there is getting Joe Pesci. Like you said, he hasn't done anything seemingly in a long time, and I think that would be a key player to this whole ensemble. So I would be interested to see if they can actually get him or not. But I'm intrigued as well. Amanda, you look like you wanted to say something about this one.
Dude, Joe Pesci is Joe Pesci. So I'm pretty sure he can just jump back in and play somebody from the mob. I mean, he essentially is the guy that he was in Goodfellas in almost everything he does.
Minus all the killing.
Yeah. Fun fact about me, I always wanted to be in the mob, so I'm totally on board with anything that's
Is that a fun fact?
Yeah, it is.
Or should I be worried?
No, I just thought it was cool that these gangsters can go around some nice, tailored suits and just beat people with bats and stuff. Like, why can't I wear a pinstripe and hit somebody with a lead pipe and be cool? Like, come on.
All right, I don't know.
And eat a lot of spaghetti.
Eat a lot of spaghetti, that's part 2?
Yes.
And have a nickname. What would your nickname be?
Ooh.
All right, Matt, what do you think about, I don't know if you're a fan of, the likes of Goodfellas, Casinos, and stuff like that, but what do you think about this whole thing?
I mean, if it were 15 to plus years ago, it would have been like a lock.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know, could they all play 60-year-old versions of the guys from the 70s? I don't know.
Yeah.
But if they're all inmates that have been kind of locked up for a while, isn't that the premise?
I don't know how it's going to tackle it. All I know is it's mob drama about 70s, 80s, and 90s. So seems like it spans quite a 3 different decades. So it could be a overall overarching story of before, during, after, all kinds of stuff.
Well, they all have some kind of footage from their younger days in movies. So I think with the advances in how they're digitally enhancing people's faces now to make them look like younger versions of themselves, I think that if done right, I think they could probably pull that, at least the visuals off.
All right, we'll have to wait and see if he gets any of those actors to actually sign up for the role or not. We'll keep our eyes open for anything about the Irishman moving forward. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, though, we'll be giving you our thoughts on the main attraction today, Captain America: Civil War.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Greg.
This is Chuck.
And this is Dan, and we are Talking in Circles.
Because the world needs another podcast, we are here as Geekcast Radio's newest edition.
And as the title says, each week we get lost in conversation about a wide range of topics, including movies, comics, games, art, TV, and even occasionally sports.
We play games and discuss pivotal topics like who would win in a fight, the Kool-Aid Man or Tony the Tiger, and examine the hot-button issues of the world of geekdom.
We keep things fresh by taking timeless topics in new directions.
We are simply 3 friends having a fun time talking about life's most fascinating foibles.
Stay connected with us every Tuesday on iTunes or at geekcastradio.com.
Hey guys, it's Optimus Solo and
Hard Candy Mandy.
we just wanted to let you guys know about another podcast out there that we both think you would all enjoy.
It's one of both of our favorite shows to listen to, and it's none other than the True Bromance Podcast.
True Bromance is a movie podcast hosted by longtime friends Hyro and Barry, and if you like to smile, laugh, and just be genuinely entertained while listening to movie talk, then this is definitely the right show for you.
Each week, the guys break down a recently released movie, and not only do they tie in the movie that week to the beers that they are drinking during the show,
but they also tie it in to a real fun top and bottom 5 list associated with that movie.
It's a blast hearing both sides of these lists, and it definitely makes them unique amongst all other movie review podcasts.
So we definitely want to recommend all of you guys to go check out their show. Just search out the True Bromance Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, and all other podcast platforms. And if you listen via iTunes, do us a favor and leave them a 5-star review. And don't forget to let them know that the Cinema Geeks sent you.
On the Simplistic Reviews podcast, we talk movies. We talk TV. We talk.
Hello, Julie, what the heck are you doing?
Trying to make our spots sound more exciting by adding explosions.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could have got the point across with sound effects, not the real thing. Car.
Download the show on iTunes or at simplisticreviews.blogspot.com.
I'm sure your insurance company will cover that.
No, they won't.
No, they probably won't.
Now back to the show. Do you see how your patience paid off?
All right, thanks for sticking with us. As we said before the break, we're coming back now with a main discussion of Captain America Civil War. Obviously, those followers and listeners and the fans of the Geekcast Radio Network would expect us to cover Captain America Civil War in some way, shape, or form, so we're bringing you that. Might be a little bit after the fact, but what that gives us the benefit of is we've had a chance to view the film, digest it, sit on it, think about it, maybe read some other reviews, maybe even listen to other podcasts that have talked about Captain America Civil War, and now we're coming at you after all of that to give you our thoughts on how this film worked or didn't work and where it stacks up amongst the other comic book or Marvel Cinematic Universe films. So, Dan, why don't you start us off here? What were your thoughts on Captain America Civil War just in general? After viewing the film, did you like it? Did you dislike it? And why did you feel that way?
So going into this, obviously, like you mentioned, I am a Marvel fan. I have been for a long time. Captain America is probably my all-time favorite superhero. I love Winter Soldier, though I was kind of a little hesitant thinking that maybe Marvel kind of peaked with Winter Soldier. I liked Age of Ultron, I think, more than most, but still felt like a step down compared to Winter Soldier and First Avengers. Enjoyed Ant-Man, but again, it wasn't, I think, on the same level of other single, introductory films like Iron Man. So I was wondering, okay, maybe Winter Soldier is going to be the peak, and maybe we won't get something to the level of Winter Soldier or that of the Avengers again. But ultimately, bringing the Russos back was a great choice, and what they ended up doing is he's kind of giving us both, giving us a film that had similar aspects to that of Winter Soldier and had the spectacle of the Avengers, and within everything you'd want, the humor, the action, the drama, spectacle. It was really the entire deal. I enjoyed it thoroughly from start to finish. I felt that the Russo brothers showed that they have a strong understanding of these characters, their motivations, how this universe works, and really improved upon issues I had with Age of Ultron and some of the characters, and fix is a strong word, but I would say deepen a few of them. And I thought the way they incorporated the storyline of Civil War, of course, they changed a lot from the source material, but I was fine with. But I thought they almost used the Marvel formula in a way to trick you. Like, they set it up in a way you thought, okay, this is the way it's going to go, but I liked how they subverted that expectation with the final act without being too spoilery. But yeah, so ultimately, enjoyed it a great deal. I think it is top echelon of Marvel up to this point. I don't think I liked it as much as Winter Soldier, but it's right there for me. So,
Amanda, what about you? What was your reaction coming out of Captain America Civil War? Where does this kind of fall for you in the Marvel Cinematic Universe after watching it, and what worked or didn't work the most for you?
I'm definitely in line with Dan as far as the enjoyment of Winter Soldier and this. I think that this is just below Winter Soldier. I think that Bucky is the most badass motherfucker that we've seen so far in the Marvel Universe, by far, and for me anyways. And I was really excited to jump back in a world with him in it. And I think that this definitely had an Avengers feel, but it was set apart. I mean, the lack of Thor, the lack of Hulk,
was present, but it wasn't a big smack in the face. So it was subtle, but it definitely felt a little bit different than just an Avengers movie. And I loved the new Avengers. I love the integration with that. I think we'll probably get further into that with, when we dive into the characters a little bit more. But I think that as far as my initial enjoyment of this movie, I was all in. I was prepared to be disappointed, but I was not. I think that a couple things that I saw in the trailer I wish I would have withheld. I think that's kind of what the norm is right now. But definitely didn't take away a lot from the movie that we were exposed to there. I think that the action and the humor and everything really carried over with the characters. So I don't know. I was super stoked to see it and not disappointed.
Matt, you're often someone, obviously, like a lot of us, that don't necessarily like source material being changed too much. Dan mentioned that obviously they do change quite a bit of the source material from the comics as far as the Civil War goes and what we got on the big screen. Did that bother you at all, or do you think that they did the story justice even if they had to make some changes here and there?
I don't even know how to get that into words. Yeah, I am definitely, one thing I am is, if you're going to use the name, you should be the idea that was conveyed in the original one. And flat out, they got like the tone, they got the concepts all. It's definitely a spiritual version of it, if not a page for page reshoot. I like it. It's good.
You like it? It's good. What about as compared to, like, people have been throwing out the Avengers films or Captain America, Winter Soldier? How do you think it stacks up compared to those?
Oh, I think it blows Winter Soldier out of the water. Like, Winter Soldier is not in my top 5. It wasn't before this, and it definitely isn't after this. I think it's better than Avengers 2. I didn't even go so that far to say that. Like, I like it. It's really good. They did a lot of things really good. Zemo, they did Baron Zemo so well. I mean, I'm a little upset that they changed his background because they didn't need to. They really didn't need to change his background. That's upsetting. Although they might not have changed it as much as we think, because he might be lying about things. Because he's Zemo.
Definitely a character we might be seeing more of, so we'll have to wait and see how some of that unravels. I don't know where I'm kind of middle of the road, I guess. I ultimately fall on the positive side of this. I think this was another great chapter of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Dan, like you're saying, hopefully dispels some of the fact that we had seen the best that we're going to get, and I don't think it necessarily continued any type of downward trend that some people might have been seeing happening. So I think it's definitely a great addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I'm not sure exactly where I'd rank it, probably somewhere in the top 4 or 5 films, I guess, that I've seen. I do have some issues with it, which we'll probably get into a little bit later on, but I think one of the things that is most impressive and continues to be impressive for the most part throughout all of these movies, especially since it seems like it doesn't have to be an Avengers movie where we're seeing obviously a bunch of different characters being thrown into it, but I think the most impressive part for me is how well this film, like the original Avengers, balances all of these different characters. And it was something that was definitely probably had a lot of people skeptical going into this, because we were adding a whole bunch of characters. Obviously, if it's something that's called Captain America Civil War, we're going to have a bunch of people on both sides. And I was intrigued to see how are we going to balance all of these characters, because we have some characters that we know very well through multiple films. We have some characters that we know through mostly smaller parts, not necessarily cameos, but smaller bit parts. And then we have some characters that we're meeting for the first time, and we're going to have to balance all of those different varying levels of knowledge of these characters on the same screen over one feature-length film, whether it's a lengthy one or not. And I was super impressed with how well they bounce from character to character, how much character development you get for almost every single character involved, and it just seems like it's something that should not be able to be accomplished by the director or the team behind the film. Obviously, we've seen it not work in other films, not talk about Fantastic Four, talk about Batman versus Superman. I mean, a lot of the times they haven't melded all those characters as well. I think the only other group that sometimes has achieved this to varying levels is the X-Men franchise, but I was super impressed with how well they were able to develop all of these characters, get us to know them, get us to appreciate what their motives are, etc., and the ability that they were able to share the screen time. Dan, going back to you, since you started off, was there, getting into the characters specifically, I guess, as a segue for that, was there characters that worked more, worked less, or how did you feel the balance worked, and how did you like the new characters?
I don't know if there's any characters that didn't work for me completely. I thought the balance was pretty solid. The introduction to new characters, like I think Black Panther certainly fits in a lot more organically than Spider-Man did, and you could argue they kind of forced him in there. But I was okay with it because, one, I loved everything about the character since the moment he walked on screen. It was a time and place where they needed to add in some levity, and it worked really well, and I think really energized the movie when he came in. I think, ultimately with everything going on, like I mentioned, like Scarlet Witch, I felt was fixed in a lot of ways. I felt with Age of Ultron, she I don't know, she just seemed incomplete, and I felt like they really developed her here. There's still a lot of room to grow. She's not perfect, but I liked what they did with her and Vision, who I think is still the one they're having the most trouble with, since he's such a powerful character. It's hard to try to figure out how do you incorporate him, especially with these, giant set pieces when you're having these heroes face off. It seems like it's hard to find a way to make it work when you're having a guy who shoots arrows and a dude who has legitimately the powers of a god. But I thought they did well in the way they set up the teams. And ultimately, I think what they did was with the characters of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, and really giving them ideal motivations for why they would split up and where they're coming from. And they really understood the way Tony Stark behaves and the way he deals with emotion, and the way in the principles of Steve Rogers, and how those would affect everyone else. And perhaps the motivations of why other characters would not sign these accords aren't as strong, but you also don't have 14 hours to make a movie. So I don't know, I didn't, there wasn't any character I didn't like, and I thought Zemo, while you could argue he is not the most complete character, I felt he was concise and economical in the way they used him, and he was I didn't need more. I thought they did as much as they needed to, so I was happy character all around.
Amanda, you obviously said that you liked the Winter Soldier as a character and getting to see more of Bucky. As far as the other additional characters, or those that we hadn't seen as much of that we got to see a little bit more of in this film, how did you feel that they handled all the different variety of characters in this one?
I love the New Avengers, and I think that they integrated them all very well. I think Ant-Man carried his humor over super well. How do you say that?
Super well.
And I think he showcased his willingness to join the cause. And he was really eager to be a part of the Avengers, and that for good reasons too. I don't think he wasn't out to, for glory or whatever. He was just wanted to be a part of the good fight and be involved with these people who he feels a connection with. And I think that Spider-Man had a really cool intro into the universe, and I was really excited to see Tom Holland as Spider-Man, as Peter Parker, and he definitely showed the others that he's a contender. I was a little, skeptical on how his abilities would kind of mesh in with the others, but I was really pleasantly surprised at the showcasing of his abilities and how they stacked up to the other Avengers. I think Black Panther, definitely a badass. And like we mentioned earlier, I think that his homeland, Wakanda, looks super legit, as do his abilities. And that suit is regal and super badass. He had like this cool little necklace thing going on. I think he looks deadly. And Hawkeye, though, I felt like he was kind of thrown back in. And like him versus Black Widow, I wasn't believing it. I mean, they're friends, and I feel like most of it was kind of for show, or so I thought. That's what I felt. And as far as Scarlet Witch and Vision, I think they had a weird relationship, and I really didn't care about her plight. I couldn't invest in it. I don't know why, and I think they should have shown some kind of hint of, like, her still grieving with losing her brother and still dealing with this new lifestyle she's living. It just jumped right in, like, this is cool, this is old hat kind of thing already. And I think I would have wanted to see a little bit more of her development into, like, a segue from the life she was living to the life she has now, and I think I would have been able to feel a little bit more for her situation. And then, like, the whole Vision in this big fight, and we're not into spoilers yet, so when that whole event happens, that's kind of devastating. I really didn't feel the weight of it as much. And I would have liked to seen a little bit more of an exchange
later on between the two people involved in that. But as far as, I don't know, all the other characters being thrown in and stuff, I was really pleasantly surprised with how they're all integrated, and I like that you brought up the fact that there are all these varying degrees of how much we know about them, and I think that they did handle that pretty well.
Matt, one thing Amanda mentioned was obviously the fact that we do have these people that are on the same side or have been on the same side for a number of movies, a number of years, etc., that are fighting against each other. And I think sometimes the film acknowledges this, even in their verbal exchanges as they're fighting, because obviously they don't necessarily want to do each other harm. They're just disagreeing on, more on the other issues going on in the film, outside of maybe Captain America and Iron Man towards the end of the film, at least when they're fighting in the hangar, it is a thing where they're not necessarily trying to kill each other here. They're just trying to get to where they want to be. How did you think that worked as far as the fighting against each other, and did it come across as genuine enough even though we know they're friends? And then how did you think the balance worked of all these characters in this film?
I'm gonna have to I'm so upset because Amanda and I were in agreement earlier before we started talking about the movie, and now I feel like I just want to argue with everything she just said.
This is always how it is, Dan. You hate me.
But
he didn't deny it. See that?
I loved the banter where they're fighting, and then someone who doesn't have the relationship goes, "Hey, you're pulling your punches," and we could tell. They are fighting, and they're all trained fighters, but they also don't want to kill each other, and they all have these powers that they can kill each other. Right. Almost any one of those people can kill almost any one of those other people, minus the Vision, because he's godly. And then, I also loved, the Vision and Scarlet Witch play was great because those two get married and have kids in the comics. And so the idea that they have this weird sort of, neither one of us knows how to interact socially with each other, but there's still kind of, chemistry there. I loved it. I was loving every scene with those two together, because it felt awkward, but it also did feel flirty and fun. I don't know, I loved it.
I can kind of see both sides of this. So, I can see that I like their scenes together as well. Vision's one of my favorite characters, so I like anything that involves him. But I can kind of see what she's saying, too, where we don't necessarily get that transition from where she's at the previous film to where she's at this film. So I can kind of see both sides. Dan, where do you come down on the Scarlet Witch and the Vision aspect?
Well, I like the interplay, and I can see where they're saying there's a transition period there, but I feel like you get hints of why she is the way she is, because the opening sequence, they're obviously Captain America, and they've been trying to train her and bring her into this Avengers fold. They mentioned about practicing different maneuvers. So, and with the way the Age of Ultron ends, I think there's been it seems like a year or so since that. So she's been within this team, and it's unfortunate maybe that we don't get the filler there, but I felt like they gave me enough to understand why this was happening the way it did. And I just thought I liked seeing her trying to deal with this, and how she's a centerpiece to all this, and based upon the actions of the movie. And so that's why I felt like she had a place, where with Age of Ultron, I didn't feel like that was the case. I felt like she was just there because they wanted to add in new characters. Here, there was a purpose behind her. Matt mentioned, the interaction between her and Vision, really enjoyed that. I think it's a really beginning of something that is going to be continued in later films to come. So I
just felt like he's way older. He's not a human,
I
really.
The way they handled
out.
her for the most part.
It was just weird to me. I couldn't get past the fact that I thought he was way older than her. It felt like, even though he's really not. I mean, he's younger than her, actually, because he was only
just born this year.
He's only a year old.
Yeah. But he just seems like he's too old for her, and I didn't get the flirtiness. I got some, weird, awkward...
Maybe it's a guy-girl thing.
Maybe. I'm just on the lookout for lech and creeps, so I'm just ugh, what is this weirdness? But, knowing now from what Matt said that, they do become a thing later on, I'm okay, now I can see that. Now going back, I can kind of piece it together, and I feel okay about it. But watching it, I was what is this? I don't get it. Is he her babysitter?
Matt, I didn't mean to cut you off before. You can react to that as well as continue your discussion on how to balance the characters.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I can agree that there should have been, like, some grieving in the morning, but again, like Dan said, we don't have 14 hours, so they jumped forward a year. They could have maybe thrown in a line, like, especially at the end of it, like, you know, at the end of the fight, where she's like, I didn't want to have to lose someone like I lost my brother, or something like that, and maybe just reminded us of it. But we didn't have the time for anything more than a line.
I would have been happy with just a line or two.
Yeah.
Something.
I'll concede to that. They should have at least made a mention.
What about moving away from Scarlet Witch and Vision, Matt? What were your thoughts on how they handled the rest of the characters, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and some of the more minor roles like we haven't talked about with, like you had mentioned before, Falcon, Rhodey, some of those other guys?
So, Tobey Maguire was a terrible Spider-Man. And then, it was like one of those things where we were all excited, but really it was just the only Spider-Man movie we'd ever had, so we didn't really have anything to compare it to. Andrew Garfield was amazing. This new guy, really good. Like, maybe better. Still a little awkward, like, because his voice is so, like, high-pitched and young-sounding, and I guess he's like a 30-year-old man, which is weird.
He's 30?
That's what I've been told by people. I haven't actually fact-checked it, but I've been told he's 30. Which is great, because that means, if he can do that at
20.
30... Aw, man. Now I'm upset. Because I was like, but still, at 20, you're done. Like, your voice isn't changing, you're not growing. So even still, at 20, if he could do it at 20, when he's, doing it at 25, he could still maintain a 16, 18, 20-year-old personality, demeanor, whatever. So I liked Spider-Man. Who's the other one? Black Panther's sound design. Like, I guess this is a weird thing to really love, but I loved it. Like, because when he's in the Black Panther suit, he doesn't make any sounds. But when he does all the same Black Panther moves and he's not in the suit, he sounds like a regular human being. And, like, it's a small detail, and I usually don't bug about sound design, but that was so good, and it made me so happy.
What about the balance of the rest of the characters? Obviously, we're bringing a ton of characters in here. Amanda had mentioned Ant-Man. You'd mentioned Falcon earlier. Do you think they were able to create a good balance and give equal time to enough people that we didn't feel like it was shoehorned in?
Yeah, totally. Like, everyone. I'm a little upset at, Captain America's, like he's Bucky. I've gotta keep him. I gotta keep going with Bucky, because it's like, eventually it's like, I don't know, Bucky might be wrong about this one. But I mean, he was his best friend from childhood, and then stacked on top of that, everyone he knows from childhood is dead. Like I've got guys that I might not have even talked to in like a year that I'd still do almost anything for, and I still got my friends, my other friends.
Right.
And so, I get it. I don't like it. It makes me go, no, don't do it. But I understand it, and it's totally a legit thing, and it's well written, and that's what would happen.
Dan, some of the other stuff that this led to with having this many characters is some interesting fights and some interesting action scenes. And I've heard from a couple different people that they were somewhat bored with the action, or that it was nothing that they hadn't seen before. And I can't disagree with that more, because I thought we got a whole lot of new stuff that we had never seen before. And just wanted to get your thoughts on especially some of the pairings. Obviously, we have Iron Man and Captain America with a major fight going on. We get to see Spider-Man and Falcon going toe-to-toe. We obviously get to see Vision and Scarlet Witch facing off. We got a lot of interesting things, even with Ant-Man and his powers. How did you feel the action in this one stood up to other superhero films out there?
Yeah, though, nothing we've seen before. I feel like in the most simplistic sense, yes, we've seen other people punch people before. That's a thing, I guess. But you could say that about all action, I guess, to a fundamental level. I know, I thought it was varied and well placed, and I thought they did do some interesting things. I liked how they incorporate, adding in Black Panther and Spider-Man. You had different styles. Like, Black Panther moved significantly differently than that of Captain America or Winter Soldier. They had their own styles. I thought, the sequences themselves were very varied. Like, you had the escape from the apartment complex and the chase that after that I thought was really good, and the airport sequence I thought was phenomenal. The way they incorporated all that, there was a great addition of humor as well as some interesting set pieces and surprises within that. And I thought the final sequence was just emotional to a level that the other ones weren't before, where some people where people were throwing their punches, and like we mentioned, where it wasn't the airborne sequence, no one was trying to kill each other, which I was fine with. I don't necessarily think stakes always have to mean death. It's like stakes to me in this instance is the idea of this team breaking up. That's the stakes, where this team would get to the point where they aren't able to coexist anymore. But the final sequence I thought was a good change of pace, and usually Marvel tends to just get bigger and bigger with their action set pieces, but I felt this one didn't do that in a smart way. So I don't know. I thought I loved what Russo did with the action in Winter Soldier. I actually think I enjoyed the action in that a little bit more. Felt it wasn't as, sometimes it got too overly kinetic with things, especially with Black Widow, because I know they didn't have Scarlett Johansson there a great deal, so a lot of her stuff was stunt doubles, and you could really feel that in moments where the shakiness of the camera was a little bit, but I also don't know, because I saw it in IMAX, and sometimes like the movement is seeing it at a regular screen, it doesn't seem nearly as bad. But I don't know. I love the action. I thought it was good from top to bottom.
I agree with that too, Amanda. You're agreeing with us or disagreeing with us on the action, and the other complaint that I got from a couple people that I listened to reviews on was the pacing, and that they got bored with the film, or they were checking their watch. Did you ever have a moment where you were aware of how long this film was, or did it keep a good pace for you?
I did look at the time a couple times. I don't think that I was too frustrated with it by any means, but I definitely was a little bit aware, but I get pretty antsy regardless of the film. That's really nothing to say about the movie. That's just me having ants in my pants. But the action, I really, really enjoyed. The preview that had the action in it definitely had me psyched up to see some awesome shit go down. And I think that by far the Winter Soldier action is probably my favorite. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think everything with the Black Panther, he's so well done with his movements, his style, very awesome, and it looked natural and fluid. Spider-Man, seeing all his cool little interactions with everybody, as far as his web slinging and all that, I liked it. I don't really like the Spider-Mans where the webbing doesn't come out of him. Like it's a contraption that he made. I think I like it better when the webbing actually comes out of his body. But
weird.
Winter Soldier, weird.
that was just the Tobey Maguire one, and maybe in an alternate reality, but that's always been a device even back to the 60s.
Yeah, but I like it better when it comes out of him.
She likes mutants, all right?
Yeah,
she likes
think it's more of a mutant. But I think that when the Winter Soldier grabs that motorcycle,
oh man,
that was the most badass thing I have ever seen in my entire life, pretty sure. And I think that when him and Cap and Iron Man are fighting, it's so intense, and that's the one thing that I wish wouldn't have been in the trailer. I would have liked to just been blown away in awe of that, but I'm glad that I was prepared for it so I could open my eyeballs bigger and try to take in everything that was happening. And I think that the some of the gravity of their interactions definitely comes into play, where that either they're really not trying to kill each other, just trying to whoop each other's ass, but then there's some parts you're like, wow, is he gonna really hurt him? And just like when in the final sequence in Siberia or whatever, when they're kind of double teaming Iron Man, and I'm just like, wow, is it not gonna kill him? Is it not supposed to kill him? Is he gonna die now? I kind of did feel that the line was being pushed farther and farther and farther, and they were going farther as the movie went on. They were pushing harder, and I felt that.
Real quick before we do a quick round of some spoiler talk and some final thoughts on the film, Matt, any reaction to the action or the pacing of the film?
No, it had me riveted from start to finish.
Yeah.
I didn't ever once go, oh, this is dragging on.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even been able to tell you how long the film was had I not known prior to it, and I definitely never checked my watch. We're going to get into a last round of discussion here that might contain some spoilers, so if you haven't seen it yet, you can skip ahead 4 or 5 minutes from this. Not that you have to go into spoilers a lot, but there is a couple things that we could touch on, Dan. Obviously, one thing that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has somewhat been those that want to nitpick or try to find fault here or there, since there's not a lot of places to find fault. A lot of times they point to the stakes and the gravity of things, and obviously that comes in varying degrees, but one thing that they often point to is that we're 13 films in or 12 films in before this one, and outside of, I guess, Quicksilver and maybe some minor characters, we haven't really seen any of the major characters die. Do you think they missed an opportunity to kill off, for I guess the sake of sounding morbid, a character in this film, or do you think it really makes no difference if they did or didn't, or kind of how do you feel or react to people that kind of cite that as something that maybe Marvel's unwilling to do up to this point?
Well, I think death is. I hate how the idea that stakes only involve people dying.
that's why I was trying to caveat that. Yeah.
If no one, it just seems like I feel like there's more ways, there's more things than that. Like I mentioned, I feel like the issue here not necessarily is who lives and who dies, because going into this, I didn't expect anyone to die. I mean, if these are characters who are fighting each other but have no desire to kill one another, and if you do have someone die, I think you got to the point where you may not be able to come back from that, or it'd be quite difficult to come back from that. And also, you kill somebody, it's difficult when millions of dollars are relying on a lot of these characters. But I felt the stakes were here because at the end of the day, the villain wins. You know, the team split up. You have a character who's paralyzed. You know, that you do have stakes where there is an outcome where, you know, the Avengers are no longer avenging; they're outlaws. That is the case here. So I had no issues with the stakes. I hear that a lot, where no one ever dies. I just feel like that's not always a determining factor of me getting invested in something. If that was the case, I would never watch a Jason Bourne movie or watch a James Bond movie, because I know they're probably not going to die either. So I just feel like that's just a really limited way to define stakes, is by who lives and who dies.
Yeah, I agree, and I was trying to, I guess I showed my hand a little bit because I was trying to say, echo those thoughts in the way I phrased the question, because stakes come in various levels and varying degrees, and I don't think it necessarily always has to be the ultimate live or die type of stake. We get a lot of different stakes involved with the future of this team and if they will work together. Amanda, you can react to either the fact that nobody was killed, or the stakes in the film in general, or also what he said, a little bit what Dan was alluding to, that the villain ultimately wins in the fact that they do split up here, and how that goes to another argument that a lot of people like to lobby over towards Marvel films, is that they always say that there's a lack of a good villain, and I think the main rebuttal on this one is that regardless of if you like Zemo or not, that the point is not him as a villain in this film. The point of this film is, will the Avengers stay together or be separated through his or any other action? So how do you kind of combat the two I guess, lobbies that they send towards Marvel, whether it's nobody ever dies or they don't have good villains?
I really liked Zemo. I think that if his story about his backstory is true, that makes him really powerful, and I totally vested in why he did what he did. And I think that it was genius of him to, instead of trying to take on these godlike individuals and these people with all these abilities, and people who surround themselves with other people who are on their side that have these same abilities, it's foolish for him to think that he could have really taken them out. But to pin them against each other is going to be the only way to take them down, and I think he definitely did what he set out to do. And as far as villains go, dude, I liked fucking Mickey Rourke's character in, was it Iron Man 2? I thought he was creepy. I thought he was a good villain. But I think as far as killing people off, I'm glad they didn't kill anybody off. I don't think they need to necessarily kill anybody off. And what about all the kids that are watching this? I mean, we know that parents are bringing their kids to this. I think Marvel knows that, understands that. And how would a child...
I can tell you because Optimus Prime died in 1986.
How would a child feel if one of their favorite superheroes did die in a movie. I mean, they've got toys for every single one of these characters. I mean, and they put a lot of stuff out there for kids when it revolving around this movie, and I think that it would really be devastating to the kids. So I don't think, as far as, you know, on that line goes, I don't think they should have killed anybody off. As far as us adults, I don't think that we should have to have the stakes be somebody's got to fucking die, because I mean, worse did come to worse than this. So I think they set out to do something, and they accomplished it as far as Zemo goes. So, and also, spoilers, I think that it was cool seeing the Winter Soldier's backstory and trying to figure out if he was a good guy or a bad guy, if he could be trusted, if not, if he was the only one, or if there was somebody worse out there.
Yeah. And we didn't talk a lot about the Winter Soldier backstory and kind of what part he played in some of the other characters' lives. Matt, you can react to that. Character deaths, the villain, and where Zemo stacks up against things. We also didn't talk about Crossbones, I guess, so how did he work for you or not?
Oh, so much. I love that Dan's got that sentiment, like, you know, it doesn't always have to be death, because, again, in superhero comics, who dies? And when they die, how long does it last? And so, death is almost cheap in this. But at the same time, you know, we're at, 14 movies, we've had one guy die. And you're thinking, if you're having massive clash of superpowers, people are going to die. People are going to die in the Infinity War, and if they don't, I don't know what they're doing. This was not the movie to kill people off. It's heroes fighting heroes. Even at the end when, Tony Stark is going for broke, he's still heroes fighting heroes. And people shouldn't be dying, and if they are, then someone messed up somewhere. So there's that. Crossbones is like Batroc in Cap 2. It's like, I'm aware that this character exists. I kind of know their gimmick. Maybe I don't know their gimmick. He exists, and I don't know. I don't know him well enough to actually have a comment on him. What else?
Just as Zemo, does he work as a villain? Do we necessarily need a good villain when it's about the Avengers sticking together or splitting up? So a lot of people like Zemo, and a lot of people had problems with him, but regardless, he's not necessarily the point, I guess, of what's going on. I guess, how do you react as far as where he fits in with the villains of the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Oh, man. She brought up Mickey Rourke, and, I guess he was the villain of Iron Man 2, but, Hammer was the villain of the fun of Iron Man 2. That guy ruined that movie. That whole storyline, that guy, totally terrible. But other than that, other than Hammer, I feel like every villain has been good. Who hasn't been good? Ultron was amazing and hilarious and dangerous and scary. When was there not a good villain? And then Zemo is also top tier. He made the Avengers fight and they don't even know it. That it's his fault. Right. He could straight up tell him, it's my fault. I orchestrated this, I've had a year and I've orchestrated this whole thing. And it's still just nah, we're doing this and we would have done this. And it's nah, man, he Zemo'd you hardcore. I'm so happy. I'm, so pleased with how well he did Zemo, because, in the original Civil War, it wasn't orchestrated. It was, just a massive terrorist event went wrong. Crappy superheroes were trying to deal with it. They were doing it poorly. It was all recorded. And that set off a chain of events. And in this one, it's that did happen, but there was a hand guiding things. And that hand was Zemo, and that's how Zemo works.
Yeah. All right, last round through, guys. Anything that you haven't got a chance to talk about? Any spoiler, non-spoiler? It doesn't matter what it is. Anything you haven't got off your chest, Dan? And then also a score out of 10 for Captain America: Civil War.
Oh, wow. Anything I can think of that we didn't touch upon? No, I think we touched upon mostly everything. I do feel like this is the best not Tony Stark, but Robert Downey Jr. has been with Tony Stark in quite a while. I just felt like he brought new depth to the character that wasn't there. You felt like he was on a downward trend with it in a way where maybe he was getting bored or the character was stale, and which is a little harsh. I still like the character, but I thought this, we got insight to the character that we never did before. But score out of 10, I maybe call me Marvel fanboy, but I would give this a solid 9 out of 10.
All right, 9 out of 10 for Dan. Amanda, what do you score it, and what else did you not get a chance to talk about?
Dan started in on one of my points, definitely. I think Tony really had some definition to his arc here, and even like the relationship with Pember ending was really, really telling, and I think it shows how he's dealing with things and, coping with what did happen, especially in Avengers 2, and it shows the gravity a lot more than what Avengers 2 did. Veering off that, I would have liked to have Vision and Rhodey have some kind of interaction after all that happened, and not just Tony and Rhodey. Like, I'm sure Vision can feel remorse or feel bad. I know he didn't intend to do that, but you can be like, oh shit, my bad, dude. Like, something. And I would have liked that a little bit. And Rhodey would have forgiven him or whatever would have happened. I would have liked to see, like, just a brief little exchange there, maybe. I mean, they're supposed to be on the same side, right? So I would have liked to see something, be like, bro, I didn't mean to do this, but still I gotta say this. Also, I'm super glad that they played up the Peter Parker side, not just Spider-Man. I think that I like them showing him as a kid and not just a new Avenger, and I think they brought it back to like a real life level like they did in the Ant-Man movie. So, I was a fan of that too. And I think as far as score goes, oh man, I think I'll also give it a 9.
All right, so 9 out of 10 from both of those individuals. Matt, are you going to be on board with them or slightly different? And any final thoughts that you did not get to talk about?
I like the idea of having Vision and Rhodey have a moment, especially because it could have been super awkward because like Rhodey's a career soldier. And so, like, he knows that mistakes happen on the battlefield, and like he said, like he's gone on so many missions he should have died. The fact that he's still alive, just injured, is just, like, he's still lucky. And so, like, have that moment where Vision doesn't know how to talk to humans, and, like, Rhodey totally expected this to happen eventually. But I think that would have been a way better post-credit scene than the one we got, and that would have been the perfect place to put it. And the only other idea, like, the fact that they made Aunt May weirdly sexy, but then addressed it in the movie. I love, like, when you see Marissa Tomei and you go, oh, wow, that's not Aunt May, and then Tony Stark addresses it on screen like, I never expected this, like, what is up with this? It's like, oh, they know what they're doing, and I'm gonna give them, leeway to do it. And they did it, and it was great, and it worked out for me in the end, even though a knee-jerk, it would have been a really bad thing. And I'm gonna also go 9 out of 10. And I want to add weight to that by saying I don't do half points on a 10 scale, so like that's next to perfect.
Awesome. So 3 9s. For me, I think any type of nitpick that I had to come up with would be silly because it'd be something that the film would not have been able to address without increasing its length. And it's already, a decent length on the film. And like Dan and Matt, you both have said, a lot of stuff could be done, but then we'd have a 14-hour film. So I think a lot of that comes, for me, with the motivations of each person and which side of the dilemma they fall on, and whether they side with the group that wants to sign the accords or not. I think some of that could have been developed a little bit better. Even with Iron Man, I guess if you really know the character and really kind of know how narcissistic he is, you buy into it. But I think for some people it might have been a little bit too easy with just the one encounter with the mom from the victim of Sokovia and what happened in Avengers 2. So I mean, I think some of those things, maybe if you were really trying to nitpick, but again, you can't necessarily go into every single character and what their motivations are, and nor would you want to see every single person and why their thought process is what they are. But maybe a little bit there where I would have liked to see a little bit more development in some type of extended cut of the film, maybe in some other universe if it exists. But yeah, like I said, most of the nitpicks would be exactly that, nitpicks that aren't necessarily a bad part of the film. I think it balances the action and gives us new action that we haven't seen with the likes of Black Panther, Spider-Man, and a couple of the interactions, like when Winter Soldier and Captain America are interacting together against Iron Man. None of that stuff's anything we've seen before. So new action, exciting action. I like the pace. I like the balance of all of these characters. I like the way it sets up the Spider-Man film. I like the way it sets up the Black Panther film. So I think there's a ton that this one does right, and it'd be interesting to see where else we go from here with the future Marvel films now that we've gotten this. So I am going to be, I guess I'll go 8 out of 10. I'll be the only one that doesn't go 9. But I think maybe on a rewatch or future watch, it could even bump up higher than that for me. But I think this is, like I said, one of the top 4 or 5 Marvel films that we've gotten. So 3 9s and 8, obviously glowing reviews for Captain America Civil War, and it is Matt making all of the money. So that should help you in prediction results when we get there.
I also have a bet writing on it.
Uh-oh. What's the bet?
If you can believe it, I bet a guy that it was going to make more money than Suicide Squad, and he took that bet.
That might not have been the wisest bet for that guy to take. Real quick, in closing here, anything that you've been watching, if you got a film or a TV series or something that you've been watching in the last week that you want to get off your chest and have a second to think about, 1 or 2. Dan, anything that you want to mention that is worthy?
Sure. I recently watched The Finest Hours. I don't know if you guys even remember this coming out earlier in January. It's with Chris Pine. It looks like it almost like a Perfect Storm knockoff or something, where he's a co-star and Casey Affleck is in it as well. And I went into watching it thinking it was going to be awful. It's this January release done by Disney, based on a true story. I had super low expectations and ended up actually being what I would call way better than it had any reason of being. It was directed pretty solidly. A lot of the sequences within the storm were done really well. There was a lot of really high tension. Chris Pine was pretty good. He played this sheepish type of hero that was different for him. Casey Affleck was interesting. Maybe not the best performance from him overall, but I thought it's a rare type of movie where it's like a family movie that's done seriously and not overly corny, and so I thought it was quite good. It's not, best of the year material by any means, but considering my low expectations, I ended up enjoying it. So,
what score out of 10 would you give that one?
Probably 6 out of 10, which again, it's not an amazing score, but compared to where I thought it would be, much improved.
Excellent. So The Finest Hours, I haven't seen that one yet. I was not sure. It looked like it could either be terrible, like you're saying, and because of those expectations, I've stayed away up to this point, but maybe I'll give it a watch. Amanda, you saw a 2016 film as well. Why don't you tell us about it?
Oh, man, I saw The Boy, and if you know me or listen to us, you know that I love horror, and I normally can tell what's going to happen, the twist, I can see it a mile away, all that good stuff, but I'm okay with it. As far as this movie goes, you go through the entire movie thinking things are one way, and then the end hits, and you're like, whoa, that's the twist. I did not see that coming whatsoever. There's a couple jump scares, super creepy vibe throughout the whole thing, and this unraveling of the story that happens is intriguing, and I would definitely recommend this movie, probably even to people who aren't a fan of horror, because there's not a lot of crazy big horror elements as far as gore or anything crazy like that happening. So if you like thrillers, I would definitely recommend this as well. It's definitely worth a watch. I would give it, I'd probably give it a 7.5, 8 out of 10.
Okay, so a good recommendation, I guess, for anybody that is into those genres of film, like you mentioned. The Boy, 2016 release, getting a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10 from you. The other film that we actually both saw in theater this week was, finally got a chance to check out The Green Room from Sony, who did Blue Ruin a couple years ago now, and starring Patrick Stewart. I'll let you go first, but what were your thoughts on The Green Room?
Wow, at first I was like, what? I don't even remember what that movie's about. And then we watched the trailer, and I'm like, yep, we're seeing it. So I was prepared to go into this movie it looked intense. It looked like something that I could definitely get behind and be on the edge of my seat the whole time. And it was definitely a lot more brutal than I thought it was going to be. I knew there's going to be some level of brutality in it, but it just kind of went there a couple times. And it's got the he was in Odd Thomas, he was in I think he played Chekhov. And
Anton Yelchin?
Yes. I like him as an actor. He's always pretty good. And he was in this. I really liked him. I would say that he's probably like the main character, I would say. I don't even think Patrick Stewart was like the main guy. I think he was just kind of some force that doesn't really do a whole lot. He's just kind of like the shot caller, basically. So that was a little disappointing. But he was still intimidating. I've never seen Patrick Stewart in that light by any means, and it was really cool seeing him in a new form. I'm going to say he's not the guy that you like in this movie by any means, and it went in a way that I didn't really expect it to, I guess.
Yeah, I was. I didn't know what to expect, except I knew I was on board because I liked the director's other film to a certain extent, and I like Patrick Stewart, a huge fan of his, so I was all on board to seeing this one. And but I had no expectations as to what kind of film we were going to get and what directions they were going to go. It definitely went a little more brutal than I thought it was going to go, but I don't necessarily. I'm not saying that as a bad thing or a knock against the film. I think what this film does very well is it keeps its cards close to its chest, and you don't necessarily know what's coming, and you don't know every turn or every plot angle that's happening, so it kind of keeps you guessing throughout the film, which is a big positive for me. And it was just kind of an interesting. It's almost I could see people making comparisons to the likes of another 2016 film, Cloverfield Lane, even though it's weird comparing the two since one of them obviously is very much science fiction based and one has nothing to do with that genre. But just that same type of setup where you're in an enclosed space, at least for a portion of the film, and you're not sure as far as the people that are calling the shots, what the motives are, what the facts are, what's really going on behind closed doors. So they have a lot of those types of moments in common, and I like that when a movie does things like that. And like I said, it definitely keeps you on your toes. So I was already expecting to like this film, but I liked it even more probably than I expected. Amanda, where was your score out of 10 on Green Room?
Oh, man. Based on the fact that even at the end of the movie, you were able to think back and tie in some more pieces that the kind of breadcrumbs that they dropped along for you to be able to put this whole thing together. I think I'm going to give it, I'll give it a 7, I'd say.
And that's where I'm at, too. I'm going to give this one a 7 out of 10 as well. I think it's definitely worth a watch for anybody who likes if you watch the trailer and you're intrigued, or it seems like something that's kind of for you, then I would definitely check it out. It'll be worth a watch. Dan, any other one? If you got we got time for probably one more if you have one.
Sure. I just a quick one. I watched Kill Your Friends, which is movie came out this year starring Nicholas Hoult. I think it's like a really low Rotten Tomato score, it's like 20%, which I don't know, maybe I'm weird, but I ended up really liking it a great deal. Nicholas Hoult plays this record company executive in the 90s when things were kind of going insane, and there was this huge competition between all these people to try to sign the big act, and it's sadistic. I guess, I don't know, it's like Tower Records meets Wolf of Wall Street with a little bit more with a sadistic edge to it. I just think it's great, mostly because of Nicholas Hoult. He's like phenomenal in it. I find him very funny, and it's certainly dark comedy, so I could see it really turning some heads and some people finding it a little bit too much, but I don't know. I thought it was stylistic and enjoyable, so I would recommend it. I would probably give it like a 7 out of 10 around there. But yeah, so again, if you're a fan of Nicholas Hoult, I would say check it out.
That does not bode well for my PFFL standings if it's got a really shitty Rotten Tomato score.
Because you have Nicholas Hoult on your team, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you'll have to go make that Rotten Tomatoes account and start writing some reviews like you were going to a couple weeks back. So the last one that we'll talk about real quick is catching up with something that a long unseen classic that I was trying to knock off my list of shame. Like I said, we came back from the video store with a lot of films, and a couple of them were some old ones. I got to see Glengarry Glen Ross for the first time, as well as Vertigo. So I finally got to knock Vertigo off my list of shame. So just got done watching that one earlier today, and I will say that I did enjoy that film. I enjoy the acting. I enjoy the writing. I haven't seen a lot of Hitchcock stuff for some weird, I don't know what the reason is, because I like stuff that I have seen from him, but I have not seen most of his feature films. And I will say that I like this one quite a bit. I had maybe a minute problem with one part of the ending, but I think as I sit on it more, it will become less of a problem. But I don't know. A lot of people put this in their like top 5 films of all time. I don't know if I'm quite ready to do that, but I would give this film like a 8.5, 9 out of 10, probably in my book. So right around the 8.5 mark for me. So I like Vertigo. I'm looking forward to watching some of Hitchcock's other stuff and knocking those off my list of shame as well. Dan, have you seen Vertigo?
Yeah, a few years ago. I'm unlike you. I can recognize its greatness, and I can see why it's certainly influential, but it's not my favorite Hitchcock, to be honest. I don't have any knocks against it, but I think I enjoy some of his other films a little bit more, like Rear Window or Rope or trying to think of Psycho. I like them a little bit more than Vertigo.
Well, I'll be interested to see those and kind of compare those to this one, because like I said, like you said, I can recognize the greatness and the acting, the writing, etc., and what they're doing, and some of the twists and turns and whatnot for the time period. But there was a couple issues with, his whole thing is that he has vertigo and that he can't have heights, and in one scene, he's stepping on a little step stool and he has an issue where he almost faints. Yet there's other times in the film where he's clearly on the second or third story of hotel rooms and this, that, and the other, looking over onto the street below, and it has no effect on him whatsoever. So I thought it was a little inconsistent with one of the main parts of the film, but maybe that's me being too nitpicky. I don't know. But I do recognize its greatness, and just not going to be quite in the top 10 of all time for me. Like I said, 8.5 out of 10. So that does it for what we've been watching. As far as stuff that you guys can keep your eyes out, as far as theater releases this week and Blu-rays coming out on Tuesday for Blu-ray releases, we have Dirty Grandpa, The Witch, and the one that Dan was just talking about, The Finest Hours. And as far as the films that were released this weekend that are out in theaters currently, we have, or on video demand or limited release, we have The Darkness, which we talked about a little bit when we were doing our May predictions. We have Money Monster starring Julia Roberts and George Clooney. We have Search Party, High Rise, Ewan McGregor playing the devil and Jesus in Last Days in the Desert, I Am Wrath, The Lobster, and a couple other films. Dan, anything on that list that catches your interest, something that you want to check out for sure?
I actually really want to see
not a lot to...
I actually really want to see The Lobster. I'm just curious about it because the guy who did that did Dogtooth, which was a really unique, interesting film, and just the premise is so insane. So I hope to check that out.
Amanda, anything for you? I know you were big on High Rise when you saw the trailer. So anything that you want to see on that list? Or is it a slow week for you at the movies?
I'll see The Darkness.
You were going for Kevin Bacon, huh?
Bro, love me some Kevin Bacon. I'm going through the letterbox to get my list of shame going here, and I've noticed a ton of Kevin Bacon movies I haven't seen. There's even a movie with him and Charlize Theron. I'm like, I need to see this, guys. Need to see this.
All right. I'm intrigued by The Lobster. I'm not sure what my expectations are, but I guess if I was picking one out of that list, I would pick that. I guess I like Ewan McGregor, so maybe I would watch Last Days in the Desert if it was free and on TV and I didn't have to go anywhere. Matt, anything on that list that steps out to you that you want to see?
I'm going to say no, but go and watch Money Monster.
Why?
I don't know, man. Maybe I got a guy in it in the PFL. I've heard a lot of talk about it. It didn't interest me at all when I watched the trailer. But I know that
you're just vying for points.
There's a lot of people talking about it, and maybe that's the thing.
All right, so we'll have to wait and see who gets points and who doesn't get points from all these films that are coming out. So that does it for this week's episode. Our question for you guys listening is, where does Captain America Civil War rank for you in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Is it number 1? Is it number 2, right under Avengers and Captain America the Winter Soldier, or is it way down the list? Where does Captain America Civil War rank for you out of 13 Marvel films? All right, thanks as always for tuning into the Cinema Geeks this week. You can contact us in a lot of different ways. You can call the voicemail line 502-526-5821 and actually leave us a voicemail. We'll play it on the air if possible. If we get it in time, you can visit the website, geekcastradio.com, find the episode post and comment there. We'll try to interact with you. At least one of us should be able to see that and interact with you on the website. You can visit the Facebook page by searching Geekcast Radio Network, and the best way to interact with us individually is through Twitter. The page site Twitter handle is @GeekCastRadio. This podcast is @Cinema Geekcast. Mine is @Optimus Solo. Amanda, if someone wants to interact with you, directly, how do they interact with you?
Hard candy, Mandy, eyes, no eyes.
And you have some guest appearances coming out in the next couple weeks or months, so we'll tease those, but what shows are you going to be on here coming up?
I'm going to be on, I think it's Get Real Movies and Hydrate Level 4 coming up here pretty soon.
All right. And Dan, how can people interact with you on Twitter? And you also recently had a guest appearance on another show, so why don't you go ahead and let people know where they can listen to that?
Sure. I am at Movie Revolt, and I was recently on the First Time Watchers talking about The Phantom Carriage, which is pretty much exactly the same movie as Civil War. So, not so much. It's a 1920s foreign German silent film. So there you go. But if you're a fan of horror, it's actually one of the first horror films ever made. So we talked about that. You can check it out. First Time Watchers on their podcast.
All right. And Matt, what is your Twitter?
I'm at Fridley Scent, and no one invites me to their podcast.
Me neither, Matt. So if anyone's out there is looking for a guest, Matt and I are feeling lonely here in the corner. So
I'll be really quiet and then just spew forth a million words about a thing that no one's really interested in. I'm really good at that.
I'm sure somebody out there is looking for that exact thing. So your Twitter's going to be blowing up this week. So that is it for us. Be sure to check in next week for another chance to listen to the Cinema Geeks. Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right. Everybody has the intro.
I say that, and I don't have that up, so I don't know why I do that every time.
Yes, I'm good. Just give me a minute.
I am ready. Soon. All right, I'm good to go.